Heir of Svartån by L. Nelson. Chapter 1. Maddie and I faced the wall of video games inside Gamer's Joy at the mall. She smiled as her eyes locked onto one in particular, Loishara, Heir of Svartån, the latest game in a series we were both hardcore fans of. Next to us was a full advertising display letting people know it was now available. Ina? I looked over at my best friend as her grin broadened, making me smile a little. They really outdid themselves this time, didn't they? Maddie had talked about the games for weeks, sharing various bits of trivia, tidbits about the games, the world, and her theories on what different plot lines and quests might be. I nodded. My stomach churned too much to say anything. If we got caught being here, my mother would be livid. With me, at least. Maddie had more freedom. Even so, we weren't supposed to be here. She cajoled me into checking out the promotional materials after we picked up our paychecks from the Mexican fast food joint where we both worked. Looks like they're almost sold out. She picked up the empty game case and inspected the cover art on it. But what can I say? It's an epic series. My dad knew what he was doing. He definitely did. I glanced out to the main hall, trying to focus on Maddie's words while still making sure that Robert, my mother's live-in boyfriend, wasn't around. His primary job was as a mall cop, and he had a shift today. Without thinking, I pulled my long blonde hair in front of me, as if it would keep me hidden. Anyway, I guess we should head home. Maddie put the case back on the wall and pulled a strand of dark brown hair behind her ear. I downloaded the game to my console this morning, so it's ready to go, and the longer we stand here, the less time we'll get to play it before your mother or Robert gets home. Yeah, hopefully Robert hasn't seen us yet. My fingers started tingling and my throat tightened as I tried to suppress the anxiety inside me. My mind wandered toward a variety of worst-case scenarios. Maddie grabbed my hand and squeezed it. The pressure comforted me. Even if he does, we'll tell him we're here at the mall to get our paychecks. It's not a lie. Yeah, I guess. I peered over at the guy behind the register. As soon as I made eye contact, he looked elsewhere. I got the uncomfortable feeling he'd been watching us. Turning back, I focused on Maddie's shoes as we walked away. When we reached the front of the store, a familiar deep chuckling sound made me glance up. I froze as I saw Robert in his uniform. His face lit up with a smug grin. Well, what do we have here? He stood in the open archway, arms crossed in front of him as I stepped back, wishing I could disappear. Maddie took my hand again and positioned herself between him and me. We were just heading home. Robert shifted his stance, blocking our path. Hey, I'm your friend, not your enemy. And Ina knows where she's supposed to be. He stared at me without blinking, and I ducked my head. I hated confrontations with him. Either he'd snitch on me to my mother or get me to buy his silence somehow. Maddie leaned into his line of sight. We came to pick up our paychecks, and I wanted to check the promo stuff for the new Loishara games. Ina's not doing anything she's not allowed to do. Just being a good friend. He smirked at me and then turned to Maddie. I don't know about that. And I still don't know why you're working at that food stall with Ina. Her mom told me about your inheritance from these Loishara games. If I had that kind of money coming to me, I'd never work another day in my life. Maddie ignored the comment and pulled us between Robert and the doorframe. He stood still instead of moving away, so I had to squeeze my body against his. His smirk lit up as I popped out of the tight space and into the main mall area. As soon as I was out of the store, he glanced back at the promotion materials. Still don't know what you kids get out of these games. There's so much crap in them that isn't real. Maddie stopped. I knew how much she loved those games, and Robert knew insulting them was one of the few things that got her angry. She turned back to him. What? Name 2 things that are crap and unrealistic about the games. And not something like dragons. They're fantasy games. They're supposed to have fantastical things in them. But the stories and lore are amazing. Maddie's glare intensified as Robert smirked. He closed in on us while staring Maddie down and held up 2 fingers. A dark-skinned Ixaphaean whelp like you, Maddie, would never survive in Loishara. And there aren't any half-breeds either. Or at least there shouldn't be. Loisharans don't mix with outsiders, whether they're human, elven, or otherwise. Maddie's eyes widened, and I gaped at him in stunned silence. After a moment, Maddie scowled. You're an idiot, Bob. And so much more. just saying stuff because you're jealous that you didn't come up with the idea. Because you're stuck being a mall cop for the rest of your life. Never. A panicked shout to our left, and then the sound of something colliding with a trash can and tumbling to the ground pulled Robert's attention away. I grabbed Maddie's hand this time, wanting to escape the situation as fast as possible. We hurried off, and just as we got to the door, Robert spoke up in a tone that made me cringe. See you at home, Ina. Once we got home, I relaxed. The house was empty, for which I was grateful. My mother's shift at the local hospital ended late, so we could relax tonight. I didn't know when Robert would be home, but I avoided the thought. For the time being, we had the basement to ourselves, including the room we had shared since her mom's death and Maddie's subsequent arrival in Fargo 4 years ago. After both her parents had died, Maddie had had the misfortune of my mother becoming her legal guardian, though neither of us fully understood why, only that she had little in the way of a biological family outside of her parents. As soon as the door closed, I curled up on my mattress and watched Maddie turn on the old console. Loishara Heir of Svartån was the newest title from Gunvald Gaming Studios, the company that Maddie's dad set up and ran until just before his death 13 years ago. Now, a big shot gaming company owned the series, but the games themselves still revolved around the original world and lore that Maddie's dad created. According to her, he made sure that was in the contract when he sold his company, along with what royalties he or his heirs would receive. So Maddie's inheritance, and the living stipend she received since her mother's death, got a healthy boost every time a new game came out. She turned back to me and beamed as the game's introduction started. As usual, your character began as a prisoner. This time it was in a cart along with 5 other warriors. Maddie twisted her view on the screen around to a young man sitting next to her character. He surveyed the character up and down. So you're the new Thane of Svartån? A narrator continued where the young man stopped. War has ravaged Loishara for decades now. We have threats from both outside and within, and it is no longer the powerful nation it once was. With enemies combining to destroy Loishara for once and for all, as the heir of Svartån, you must rally your allies to protect your homeland and its dragons from ultimate destruction. Do you have what it takes, O Thane? Maddie squealed as I pulled together a bittersweet grin. These games were my only escape from reality, and I loved them. She sighed, glancing over at me. Dad had such a knack for creating worlds. Do you want to play first? I shrugged. The excitement I felt earlier in the day had disappeared. You can do it. It's your game. Ina, don't let Bob get to you. Pretend you're in Loishara and everyone else is far, far away, at least for the afternoon. She offered me the controller. I knew she was trying to cheer me up. Sure. I grabbed the controller. 83 days until I was on my own. The first thing my mother did each year on my birthday was to remind me that the moment I turned 18, I was no longer allowed in her house. It didn't matter if I had another place to live or not. Once I was an adult, I was out. Not that I minded the idea now, given my relationship with her and Robert. Maddie and I had been planning and preparing for months now. We'd found a place willing to rent to a couple of 18-year-olds without a massive upfront payment or a cosigner, and we'd figured out a rough budget with bills and other expenses. It was doable, and I'd be able to pay for my part through my meager savings in my part-time job. But it meant I'd have little to no time for playing video games after my birthday. The background music started up again as I put the information for my character, a comforting, powerful chant that played in the intro of every game. Whenever I heard it, I relaxed, felt safer. The song, called a plea to Teneleth in the game lore, built up again to a guttural crescendo as I finished creating my character and a dragon's shadow darkened the screen for a split second. The NPCs began reacting to it as I watched, admiring the graphics and enjoying how beautiful, how regal the dragon looked. When it landed, the music boomed and our room shook. We both screamed a little, startled by the loudness. Then another sound. Ina! My chest froze in panic at my mother's voice. I dropped the controller and scrambled to my feet. Why was she home? Maddie's eyes widened with fear, and she hurried to shut off the game. Ina, where are you? Get upstairs now! Coming. I forced myself to open the bedroom door as my palms began to sweat. My mouth dried up and nausea joined in as I walked to the stairs from the basement to the front hall. Mom shouldn't be home yet. She only came home in the middle of a shift if something important happened, or if she was in a rage about something. I got the sinking impression that Robert had called her soon after we left, and now I had to deal with whatever fury she had decided to unleash. Maddie walked behind me, but that didn't bring much comfort as I went upstairs. My mother wasn't in the front hall, much to my surprise and dread, but I could hear her up on the main level. I braced for whatever mood she was in. She stood in front of the table, still in her scrubs, arms crossed with a scowl across her face. Once I stopped, she glanced at the floor and her mouth formed into a tight line before her focus returned to me. "What were you doing at the mall this afternoon? Don't you dare to lie to me. Robert said he saw both you and Maddie there, at the game store." My mind blanked for a moment, searching for the right phrase to diffuse this situation before it got worse. "We were there, just looking. We grabbed our paychecks from work, and Maddie wanted to look at the promotional stuff." "And?" My mother's eyes widened, looking me over. I stayed silent, knowing her question was leading to something, but I had no idea what that something was. Had Robert lied to her and told her I stole something? Probably, but knowing my mother, it could be another thing entirely. She focused on something behind me, her expression changing to a polite smile. "Maddie, you and Ina are close. I understand, but this is something I need to discuss with her alone. Understood?" Maddie said nothing, but I heard steps down to the basement, and my heart fell. "Where is it?" My hand brushed my pocket, and I felt my pay stub. Maybe she was upset about that? Had my paycheck not gone through yet? Or was it less than she expected? Had she noticed that I'd pulled some out already? I scrambled to pull the stub out of my pocket and hand it to her. It should be in the bank account already." I flinched as she slapped it out of my hand, her nails scratching my palm. "Don't play stupid with me, Ina. Where is the game you stole?" "The game?" Everything clicked in my head. A little ball of anger lit up inside me, and I tried to suppress it, keeping my voice calm. "I didn't steal anything. I didn't." My mother grabbed my shoulder, twisting the fabric of my shirt sleeve into her fist. "Of course you did!" She shook me with every word. "Give me the game. You think I'd let you keep it? You're lucky we haven't called the police on you." She paused, glancing past me, and released her grip. "That game is mine now, and you can say goodbye to the rest of your paychecks while you're in my house." She paused, and I stiffened. "And all the money you've been sneaking out of your paychecks." She smirked. "I noticed those little withdrawals. I know you're a petty thief. You keep secrets from me like your father. How on earth could anyone trust you with anything? Money, a job, anything, when you keep acting like him." My mother focused on me. "I know you two are planning on getting an apartment this summer, but I can't imagine why anyone would want you as a roommate, Ina. You are just like your father, and mark my words, by the end of this year, you'll have disappeared on her, just like your father disappeared on me." She paused for a minute. "Now give me that game." My chest tightened as I struggled to keep my growing anger from showing. Dad hadn't disappeared on her, and I didn't have any games. But if I challenged my mother, her retaliation would be swift and vicious. "No." It was a terrifying word to say, but my anger propelled me forward. "I stole nothing, so I don't have a game to give you." I flinched as her hand landed across my cheek. The burn and sting from her nails followed in an instant. "Don't you dare speak to me in that manner. Not after everything I've done for you, Maya Ingmar Svartån." She twisted her face into an uglier scowl. "I hate your name. You know that? I hate that your father insisted his name be part of yours. It is an ugly name, and I despise that you insist on being called Ina. The day I gave birth to you was the worst day of my life. You have been nothing but trouble to me since then. Nothing. Yet I slave away to keep a roof over your head, and you repay me with this attitude and humiliation. You ungrateful—" Maddie cleared her throat, and I turned in surprise, unaware she had come back upstairs. "Mrs. Svanung, Ina didn't steal anything." Her tone held a hard edge to it, one she almost never used with adults. "We were there because I wanted to see the promo materials that they'd created for my dad's game, so I dragged her along after we got our paychecks." My mother exhaled, and I glanced up to see her straighten back up with a smile. It was a fake smile. We both knew it, but if Maddie could convince her of the truth, that might diffuse the situation. Maddie, you've been a good friend to Ina. Better, honestly, than she deserves. She paused. You don't need to defend Ina. Robert told me what she did and how he tried to be discreet. But I know my daughter, and I know Robert wouldn't lie to me. Maddie remained silent as I returned my focus to the ground. I knew what she was going to say and how my mother would react. Robert did nothing discreetly. I was there. He came in, pushed himself up against Ina, and then threatened both of us when I called him on it. Another pause. I looked up to see my mother staring at me. Is this what you wore at the mall? I was wearing my usual winter attire, a baggy long-sleeved knit shirt and jeans, along with thermals underneath to keep me warm. I had my heavy jacket on, too. She rolled her eyes. If you don't want men to touch you, Ina, then don't dress like you want it. She gestured at my outfit. Honestly, you're asking for that kind of attention with this kind of outfit, so it's obviously not unwanted attention. My chest and throat tightened into two hard knots as I stood there, my anger rising faster than I could push it down. This wasn't the first time my mother had defended Robert when Maddie or I had called him out on his actions. I have never asked for Robert's attention. The words popped out of my mouth before I could stop myself. I've told you plenty of times, and you've never listened. My clothes aren't the problem. Robert is the problem. You are the problem. You believe him over me when I've done nothing to make you not trust me. My chest squeezed tight with guilt, anger, and fear once I stopped. I took it as a point of pride to never lose control. As soon as I did, my mother could twist anything I said back at me. And I had just lost control of my emotions. I had shown my anger. Are you done yet? I wasn't done, but it wasn't like my words would do anything to help me. Yes. She turned to the table and grabbed her purse. My break is almost over, and I need to get back to the hospital. If you won't admit to stealing or being a slut, then I can't help you. She walked past us, slamming the front door. I heard her car rev up and pull out of the driveway. As soon as she was gone, I exhaled and put my hands on my knees, my body beginning to shake violently as I mentally cursed my mother with every obscenity I could think of. Maddie wrapped her arms around me tight. I swear, your mother's the biggest guamayo, the nastiest witch I've ever met. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks. 83 days, Maddie. I wish I could disappear today. I don't know if I can survive 83 days. She gave me a tight hug. You'll make it. In 83 days, we'll both be out of here. We'll have an apartment through the end of the summer at least. Then we can go wherever we want to go. We don't have to call Fargo home. We can go to Seattle or somewhere else. Where would you want to go? I don't know. Anywhere. Loishara. A bitter laugh popped out of my mouth at the ridiculousness of it. Loishara feels more like home than any place on earth. Maddie laughed too. I don't know about that, but Loishara is kind of like Sweden or Norway. We could get passports and move there. I think that's the closest to Loishara that we'll get here on Earth. She paused for a moment. But for tonight at least, you can be the new Heir of Svartån, okay? I stood up and shook my head as we walked back to our room. Not tonight. You can play and I'll just watch. Maddie sighed. Ina, you can't. Don't let people, especially not your mother, treat you like this. You need to learn to stand up for yourself and let people know that they can't treat you this way. My laugh came out bitter again as I wiped tears from my eyes and felt a flash of anger toward Maddie. She hadn't lived with my mother her entire life. She hadn't been told from a young age how worthless she was. A pang of guilt made my lungs and heart twist at the thought, and instead I directed that anger inward. None of this was Maddie's fault. She was trying to help, and she was right. I couldn't let people treat me like this. But I had tried standing up for myself, and it didn't work. It never worked. Did you see what just happened there? She just blew it off like I was some little kid having a temper tantrum. I exhaled. I wonder sometimes. What if my mother is right? What if I am just destined to let everyone down? I mean, I still sometimes wonder why you've stuck around. You could have left 2 years ago, declared yourself emancipated, gotten away from my mother. Ina, I stayed because you're my best friend. I'm not going to ditch you just because it's easy. Plus, you need, someone to remind you that you aren't worthless and that your mother's full of crap. She's a narcissist and her behavior is abusive. You're not asking for attention when you dress normally. She's a horrible mother and she should be protecting you from Robert, not defending him. Maddie got the game started up again as I picked up the shell-shaped trinket that my father had given me before he left from off our shared bookcase. He'd called it a dragonstone and told me it was important. Luckily, it was an unassuming rock, so my mother had never given it a second glance. It was a relief given that she had destroyed so many other items associated with my dad after he disappeared. It was oval-shaped like a clamshell, but thicker and greenish-gray with tiny horizontal ridges running across the top and a smooth dent on the bottom. Whenever I felt anxious, shaken, or jittery, I'd rub my thumbs into the curved indentation to calm myself. I settled on my mattress, rubbing the stone and kneading it into my hands as if trying to bend it. Maddie paused before turning to me. You sure you don't want to play? I shook my head. You play. I can watch you be an epic mage and shoot fireballs and stuff at bad guys. Figure out how not to get myself killed within the first 5 seconds, too. I gave her a weak grin, hoping that my joke would lighten the mood. She hesitated and then started a new game for herself. The intro song started as I continued playing with the stone. Maddie created her character and the dragon reappeared on the screen. Wiping my tears away, I wished, as I had many times before, that Loishara was more than just a video game. That night I had another vivid dream about Loishara. There was no actual logic or pattern to the dreams, but they popped up at least once a month ever since I was a small child. The only connection between any of them was that I was always in Loishara, and this dream was no different. This time I was at the gates of the mighty city of Dradayurt, one of my favorite places to visit in any of the previous games. Only now they were in shambles and there was chaos everywhere. Soldiers and warriors fought around me. I too wore armor and weapons of war, covered in heavy cloth and chainmail, while wielding a generic sword and shield from the games. The enemy soldiers swung at me as I blocked them and forced my way into the city. The fighting made me feel as if I was in the game like usual, except this time there was a sense of urgency in the dream I had never felt before. I had to get to the palace. My legs moved as if they were wading through mud, while blows from swords danced around me. Enough to feel like I was in the middle of a battle, but not so much that I was in danger. I blinked as I had done so many times before in these dreams, and in an instant I was inside the palace. The main hall leading from the front doors to the throne room rang with swords clashing and the screams of people just outside of my field of vision. Ina! I turned to look behind me, surprised to hear my name. In my dreams, no one ever called out or acknowledged me, but as I did, I found myself in the throne room, amidst more fighting. Turning around almost a full circle, I saw my father? No, someone who looked like what I remembered of my father. It was as if my dream had combined my memories of him with the Loisharan video game world. He wore Loisharan clothing and fought several men with ease as I watched. Their armor identified them as Bloodnar soldiers, the main quote-unquote enemy in the most recent game, and one of Loishara's longtime foes. Next to him stood another younger man fighting, the original Gunvald Gaming Studios logo on his shield. My quote-unquote father glanced over at me after pushing a couple of soldiers away from him, knocking one to the ground. He smiled for a moment before going back into the fight. A guttural cry came from behind me, and I turned to see an older man with a crown and finely made armor crumple to his feet. Kale! Intense dread washed over me as a Bloodnar soldier pulled his sword out and plunged it in between the king's armor plates again. The young man who had been fighting with my father jumped to the king's side, cutting down the Bloodnar soldier. But as soon as the king's eyes rolled back, a dragon's screech echoed through the building. I glanced up, half expecting to see the dragon from the game's intro appear. Retreat! The Bloodnar soldiers fled from the throne room as another dragon screech roared above the palace. The young man knelt next to the king in despair as a groan to my left made me look back. I glimpsed my father's look-alike. He laid on the steps leading up to the throne, his face contorted in pain, as his left hand held his side, and his right held a pendant close to his chest. It glowed through his fingers and reminded me of the ones worn by the major characters in the Loisharan games. Ingmar, stay with me. The young man now knelt beside my father as he began mumbling some kind of chant, most of which I couldn't understand. He gazed at the young warrior. Maya Ingmar Svanung, my heir, Thane of Svartån. His voice faded as I knelt next to him. From my new view, I saw that he had many more injuries across his body, including his face and neck. All of his injuries bled heavily. He moved his head ever so slightly as if looking at me. My Inca, I'm sorry. Horns bellowed in the distance as the pendant disappeared from his hand and his arm went limp against his chest. My throat tightened and I closed my eyes as I tried not to cry. I told myself this was false. This was a dream, and that everything around me was only my imagination. And yet, kneeling over the dead body, the overwhelming sense of loss and heaviness was too real to be just a dream. Whatever kind of dream I'd had the night before had left me restless and with little sleep. When Maddie and I got home from school the next day, I was more exhausted than ever. You want to play this time? Maddie asked as I settled down on our gaming rug and stuffed some crackers in my mouth, hoping food would help me wake up. I nodded and waited until my mouth was empty. I think playing will keep me awake for a few more hours, and I can eat while I'm playing. You should have had some of my fries today. I shook my head. I don't want to mooch off of you. The chocolate milk you got me helped, but Ina, your mother mooches off of you more than you'd ever mooch off of me. It's not like she needs your paycheck, or should. Either way, chocolate milk isn't exactly going to break the bank. I still feel bad. Maddie shook her head and got the game started as I stood up to grab my stone from the night before. Even though I was still eating, it had become a habit to rub the stone a few times for comfort as soon as I got home. Sometimes I wish Loishara was an actual place we could visit, I said, settling down on the gaming rug. Maddie offered the controller to me. You know, I was thinking about what you said last night, about wishing Loishara was real. My mom always said she thought Loishara was an actual place, even though my dad would tease her about it. I furrowed my brow as I took the controller from her. What? Maddie fiddled with something in her backpack. My dad would talk about it as if it was an actual place that he'd grown up in, and sometimes he'd get nostalgic about it. But whenever my mom asked about it or pulled out an atlas to have him point out where Loishara or his hometown of Andrader was, he'd tell her that no map of this world would have it, so she always thought it was something from his childhood, some kind of imaginary version of where he lived growing up. Huh. The idea lingered in my head as I created my character again. The games were realistic enough. Maddie's dad had made the world as detailed and nuanced as our own, even though each Loishara game centered around a different quote-unquote hero and area of Loishara. There were a few places that popped up in every game. Dradayurt, the capital, and the different Thanes estates in particular. Each place even had its own unique style and history. Stagnadum, the Thanes estate in Svartån, was my favorite place to visit. Maddie's had always been Miratoft, the Thanes estate in Andrader, a quote-unquote province named after her dad's hometown. I'll be honest, Maddie continued. I'd love to find out once and for all if Loishara was all just my dad's imagination or if there was some truth to it. Like it could be based on the stories he grew up hearing as a kid, or what his hometown was like ages ago. I mean, there's a Svarta in Sweden. That's pretty close to Svartån. Maybe Andrader is an ancient name for someplace nearby. She nudged me. We could go live in Sweden, or Norway. I grinned as I placed my stone on the edge of the desk holding the console and TV screen. Maybe. Maddie left the room as I started the game up, imagining what I would do if I was in Loishara. Not just the game as a character, but if that world was real. It was a tantalizing thought. As I led my character through the wintry hills away from where the game started, a shadow crossed over my character and I maneuvered the controller to look up. A dragon sailed over my head as the fighting music started. A thrill coursed through my body. The dragons in Loishara never threatened the main character, unless I had my character attack one. So the fight music meant that there were enemies ahead, and I was about to stumble into a fight. As I broke out from some snowy bushes, I found a group of Bloodnar soldiers running around, their archers shooting at the dragon as it swooped down, knocking them to their backs. It sailed off and made a U-turn as the remaining soldiers scrambled to their feet. A yellow button icon popped up on my screen as the dragon opened its mouth. I slammed my thumb on the matching button, knowing what was about to happen. But I was a second too late, and as the dragon screeched, the edges of the screen blazed red and then black and white as my character died and the buttons to respawn popped up. Pretending to be in Loishara again? I jumped at the sound of Robert's voice. He laughed as he walked up to me. Your mother said you were supposed to be studying. My body tensed up as I stared at the screen, trying to both respawn to a safer spot and avoid a conversation as much as possible. Just holding it for Maddie. I put the controller beside me as soon as the character came back to life. Robert laughed again. You're a terrible liar. His attention turned back to the game and snorted. Is that supposed to be Loishara? I knew better than to engage in a conversation with him. It always ended badly. But his comments at the mall yesterday, and given Maddie's and my conversation today, you act like Loishara is an actual place. I tried to sound as if I thought the idea was stupid. He snorted again and squatted next to me, rolling his eyes in derision. Of course it is. Most beautiful place in the world, and I'm trapped in this frozen wasteland. I shifted away from him and against my better judgment asked, Where is Loishara then, compared to here? A condescending chuckle this time. He turned his attention from the game and poked me in the shoulder. You honestly think Loishara is real? Even if it was, I don't think you'd survive there for a day. My insides curled up and I shook my head. I should have known this would make me sound like an idiot. Embarrassment at even the thought of Loishara being real bubbled up inside me. Never mind. He knelt down so that his mouth was next to my ear. No matter how much you wish Loishara was real, you'll always just be stuck here in Fargo. Humiliated and angry, I shoved him away, scratching him for good measure. Go, just get out of here. He shoved me to the floor and stood up. Glancing at the television screen, he slammed his arm into it. It crashed into the floor, and the screen went black as it cracked. Hey, what are you doing? Get away from my stuff! Maddie ran into the room and dropped whatever was in her hands. He pushed her aside as soon as she reached him and stalked towards the door. Whatever. Turning back to me, he growled, Like I said, you wouldn't last a day in Loishara. He stormed off, slamming the bedroom door and making the flimsy walls shake. Maddie opened her mouth to say something as I saw my stone wobble on the edge of the desk. My stone! I grabbed for it as it fell off. Bright light hit my eyes as I heard it shatter on the floor like a ceramic plate. Maddie and I screamed as the light enveloped the room.